Hey meal preppers, welcome back to Sweet Peas and Saffron. I'm Denise and I share easy meal prep recipes that will give you your time back later in the week. Today we're going to talk about 12 ingredients that you might not know you could freeze. Freezing food can help prevent food waste, and then you can repurpose these ingredients into new recipes. And I'm excited to share 12 of my picks with you. Stay tuned to the end of the video when I'm going to be sharing what you guys freeze. So the Sweet Peas and Saffron community has submitted some ideas and I'm totally geeking out over them because I learned a ton of new things I could freeze. All right, here are 12 ingredients that you could be freezing. The first ingredient you could be freezing is cauliflower rice. If you make a big batch of homemade cauliflower rice, you can also freeze the leftovers. You can freeze it before cooking and you can freeze it after cooking. And then when you are in need of an easy side dish, you can just dump the frozen cauliflower rice right into the pan and saute it from frozen. The next thing on the list is hummus. So as a small family, we can struggle to get through a whole batch of hummus sometimes. And so we just freeze our leftovers. I like to freeze my leftover hummus in mason jars, so I leave about a quarter of the jar empty to leave room for expansion, and I also leave the lids partially open until the hummus has frozen solid. I haven't had any issues with taste or texture, with the exception of the avocado hummus recipe on my site. That one kind of got brown and a little weird tasting after we froze it, but all the other recipes have frozen great. The next thing that you could be freezing is food scraps. So I have a bag in my freezer at all times which contains veggie scraps, leftover herbs, and even chicken bones. I repurpose my scraps into either vegetable stock or chicken bone broth. If you are interested in learning how to make bone broth, I'm going to link you to my video in the description box below. You can also freeze onion peels, garlic, carrot tops, carrot peels, almost any vegetable you can pop in the freezer. The next thing on the list is steel cut oats. So personally, I have no problem getting through my steel cut oats, but if, for example, you wanted to cook like a week or 2 weeks worth of steel cut oats, you can totally do that and then keep them in the freezer so that you don't run into food safety issues. So you could do this a couple of different ways. One way that I have done this in the past is to just portion out into my Snapware storage containers with some berries and freeze them just like that. Another way you can do this, and this is probably better if you are short on freezer space, you can freeze them in muffin tins and then pop them out of the muffin tins and transfer them to a freezer bag or a meal prep container of some sort. The next thing on the list is rice and quinoa. You guys wouldn't believe how many questions that I get about food safety and rice. Rice is totally safe for meal prep, so long as you don't leave it out at room temperature for extended amounts of time. And yes, you can freeze it. Quinoa is great to freeze as well. I would say that they probably would be best frozen in meal prep containers for like up to 2 to 3 months. The next thing on the list that I freeze are beans. So I've been cooking my beans from scratch in the Instant Pot this year, and not only do they taste better, but they are so much cheaper. The only problem is that a pound of beans makes 6 cups of cooked beans. So for my little family of 4, we normally will eat 2 cups fresh and freeze the other 4 cups. So I freeze my beans in jars. I usually use 1-pint jars, and I cool them completely and then put them in the freezer and leave the lids off completely. I also only do this with the straight mason jars, like don't do this with the tapered jars because that could potentially lead to issues with cracking. All right, the next thing on the list is avocados. So this might sound weird because I just said the avocado hummus didn't freeze well, but if you put avocados in your smoothies, this is a really great way to repurpose them. I have a delicious matcha avocado smoothie on my website, and I will link you to it below. So to freeze the avocados, we just freeze them on a cookie sheet and then transfer them to a bag. And then you can toss them in a smoothie from frozen. I know some people have experimented with using freeze-thawed avocados in things like guacamole, and it was like okay, but that's not what I would personally use it for. I think it would be better blended into things. It might even work blended into the hummus, but I haven't tried that. Okay, so the next thing on the list is cheese. I always freeze my Parmesan cheese because we just can't get through a block of Parmesan cheese before it goes off. So I just wrap them in either a little bit of plastic wrap or some reusable beeswax wrap, and I put them in a larger meal prep container and freeze. The next thing on the list that you could be freezing is nuts. If you have a problem with your nuts going rancid before you can get through them, you can just have them in the freezer and then take them out of the freezer as needed. This is also a great tip for storing nut flour, which I actually should start doing because we just don't go through our nut flour very quickly. Our next ingredient that you can freeze is ginger. Now, full credit goes to my friend Natalie at Tastes Lovely for teaching me this trick. She taught me that you can freeze your ginger, and this makes grating it so much easier. You know when you try to grate fresh ginger and you get like this stringy kind of fibrous ginger and it's kind of juicy and messy and getting everywhere? If you freeze your ginger, it is like almost mess free, and you can even grate it on a microplane. Okay, the next thing on the list, and we are getting towards the end of the list now, is coconut milk. So have you ever had a recipe that calls for like 1 cup of coconut milk? You guys, I try to never write my recipes that way, but there might be some older ones on my site, I don't know. Anyway, it's super frustrating to have leftover coconut milk, but what you can do is pour it into an ice cube tray and pop it out and store it in either a meal prep container or a reusable bag or a plastic bag. And then you have these cute little coconut milk ice cubes. You could use them in your coffee, or you can have them for another recipe that might call for like a tablespoon of coconut milk. Okay, you guys, we're on the last ingredient, and it's one that annoys me to no end. However, sometimes it's too spicy if you use a whole can of Chipotles. So, I mean, they're really spicy, so you often will end up with like using 1 to 2 Chipotles or some of the adobo sauce, and you'll have like half a can left. You can totally scoop that out, put it in a meal prep container, and freeze it for later. Okay, you guys, here's where I really geek out because I learned so many new ones from readers of Sweet Peas and Saffron. These are all submitted by readers. So here's what you guys are freezing: roasted garlic, milk and cream, butter, wine, eggs. I believe these are like raw uncooked eggs, tomato paste or leftover pasta sauce. And a surprising number of people mentioned that frozen potato chips are amazing, so like totally have to try this. Lemon zest, maple syrup, anchovies, coffee and ice cube trays, which I bet is for iced coffees, curry leaves, Parmesan rinds, which I believe some people put in soup, grapes to be eaten frozen, which is another thing I have not tried, and mango. If you guys have an awesome thing that you freeze that's not on this list, let us know below, because yeah, it's super fun to hear about these things. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you got some new ideas from this video. And if you loved this video, I know you're gonna love the next one because I am touring my freezer and showing you exactly what's in my freezer, how I freeze it, how I avoid plastic. So check the video out over here.